Hello everybody, welcome back to part 4 of the 1996 F250 project. We got in our helicoil kit to fix the stud hole that I messed up over here, and we're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully by the end of this video we have the engine running. Alright, quick voiceover for you guys. Here's the helicoil kit I got from Amazon. It was like 20 bucks. The first step was to drill out the threads that were there. The hole was already there, so I didn't really have to worry about the angle or approach. Came with a tap that I needed, and I was using a tap wrench from another set I had. The kit did not come with one, but when I was chasing the threads or putting the new threads in, I just had to make sure that the angle was right. Otherwise, the bolt is not going to go in right at all. So I got the threads put in there, was just checking everything, and I put the new bolts in, and as you can see here, I hold up a little square to it just to make sure it's the right angle, and everything seemed to be working fine. Okay guys, here are the heads. We're about to put them on the engine block. It has been a few weeks since I last recorded a clip for this video, so I'm not sure what we've covered or what we haven't. The floor pan is fitted, but it hasn't been welded. I'm waiting to see if I can get the motor running before I put too much work into this thing, even though I've already done a lot of work. Here's our head gaskets. They're just the standard Felpro composite head gaskets. Everything looks fine. We're gonna slap these on the block because the pins, I guess is what you'd call them, the pins are in the block right now. So I'm gonna go ahead, I have cleaned off the block, I've done my final cleanup with a lighter Brillo pad, and I've cleaned it off with alcohol. This head turned out really nice. You can even see it's pretty shiny. This one has some discoloration, but when you feel it with your gloves off, you can't feel any of the material. So it's as good as it's gonna get. I think I've seen worse head gasket jobs and they have lasted a while, so hopefully this one will too. All right, we're gonna stick the head gaskets on here, and so these are labeled front, and the heads are actually the same. They're not like the right one has to go on the right one, the left one has to go on the left one. You could actually swap them, so the head gaskets are gonna be the same for both sides. I don't know if that's how it works for every motor, but I noticed this one when I was having problems extracting the bolts, that if I couldn't, I could actually just flip the heads around because it had the same bolts on the front as it is the back. If that makes sense, I'm glad that you understand it. If it doesn't, I apologize because it might be confusing. Get that guy on there. Oh, sorry, I'm probably blocking the camera right now. All right. Head gaskets are on. Hopefully that's good enough. This one keeps coming on. All right, I guess I can set the heads on and put our ARP head studs in and read the torque sequence. And actually, now that I think about it, I hope my torque wrench goes up high enough for this. You know, all of this sounds really easy when you think about it, but once you actually do it, you realize how heavy stuff is and how hard stuff is. It'd be really bad if I dropped this. And luckily, after taking pretty much everything out of the engine bay, I have loads of room. I don't know how I'm gonna get this in here without messing anything up. But we're gonna try. It's a lot easier to take things apart than put them back together. That's for sure. All right, so it's on. That's good. I'll let you have a engine bay view for the next one. I'm I'm so scared to drop these heads or scratch them or something. Make them worse than they already are. Man, these things are heavy. You might be wondering why I have mismatched bolts in these. See? I think it's in. I'm using some old studs just to keep the heads on so I don't bump them and they fall off or something. I'm gonna have to eat dinner before I can get the bolts, the new bolts, lubed up and screwed in. And then I'm still gonna have to download the torque instructions for these. Okay, so I went ahead and bought me another torque wrench. The 3/8 one only goes to 85 foot-pounds, I believe. So I swung by Harbor Freight on my way to get some Taco Bell and saw this 1/2-inch drive torque wrench for 23 bucks after taxes. So I think instead of borrowing one, which I called my friends and none of them have the torque wrench that I need, and instead of trying to rent one, I decided to go ahead and buy one, because who doesn't need more tools, right? I might need one in the future, so went ahead and bought it. And I also looked up the pattern. This is the torque sequence, excuse my handwriting. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pretty basic. There's 10 bolts in these. And then the torque sequence is 55, 65, 95. And according to this, it says I need to go to 100 foot-pounds with the ARP Ultra Torque Fastener Assembly Lubricant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the lubricant to all the bolts, get them all ready, go finger tighten everything, and then I'm going to go through my sequence of 55, 65. What I might do is just do 60, 70, and then this says 100 foot-pounds. So I'll set this to 60 and find the right size socket and get it tightened down. Okay, so our first torque sequence is 60 foot-pounds. It's on the 60. That's, I mean, I think that's how it reads. We're starting with 60 foot-pounds in this torque sequence. So we're gonna start with the middle top bolt and then move to the middle bottom bolt and then move to the right and so on and so forth. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. All right, one side. Okay, so that was the first sequence. We started with 60 foot-pounds. Now we're gonna move up to 70. You know, when I was taking this apart, I know breakaway torque is different than tightening torque, but those back two bolts, which is exactly where the head gasket failed, I recall being really easy to remove. There's gotta be some sort of correlation there, but if 105 foot-pounds is what the torque is supposed to be on this, with these new head bolts, it should really help keep the head gaskets from, you know, flexing or hopefully not failing. So we're gonna go ahead and move up and torque the next set. So there really wasn't a whole lot of a difference. Most of the bolts rotated like 4 or 5 degrees in between 60 foot-pounds, and I jumped up to 75 because it said 3 increments. So 1, 2, I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and jump up to 90 foot-pounds. We're going to do 1 at 90, and then we're going to jump up to the recommended 105 foot-pounds. And that's just what it's going to be. I'm going to do the, you know, correct bolt sequence, and then I'm just going to go through every single one just to make sure I didn't miss any of them. Okay guys, all of them have been torqued down to what appears to be 105 foot-pounds. I want to double check the manual just to make sure I'm reading this wrench right, but they've all been torqued down to sequence. 105 pounds. This one, on the third time around, it slipped just a little bit. I don't know if it just hit an easy spot, but I was so worried I just snapped the bolt off or ripped the threads out. So I just said a little prayer every time I came back to that one. They're all done, they're all torqued. Tomorrow, we're going to get the push rods and rockers installed. Okay, so we're back again. It's now Saturday. I'm going to put all the push rods in. I'm gonna coat everything in a layer of oil just to make sure there isn't too much grinding when I first start it up. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so I realize you probably couldn't see anything I was doing in that last clip. All I did was clean off the push rods and coat both ends in oil along with the valve stems, or the very tops right there where the rockers contact. These still have oil on them, and there's a pretty good amount on there. So they're all marked up where they should go. I'm just using the valve covers as a little tray. So. Okay guys, well, turns out I forgot to hit record on the valve lash adjustment, and yeah, so I didn't record any of that, which I'm honestly not too upset about because that was not fun. All of them are good to go as far as I can tell. These I was having trouble with because they just didn't seem to want to tighten up, but I think I got them. After a few rotations of the motor, they kind of got to where I needed them to be. I'm not sure if I accidentally swapped them or something, or if the push rods are just getting worn out. Whatever the case is, I think we're good. Might get a little bit of ticking, hopefully not much. But I think we're ready to throw the valve covers on. And I'm gonna look at what I need to do to put on the intake manifold. And if everything looks good, we might just go ahead and do that as well. Okay guys, so I went ahead and cleaned up my valve covers a little bit. They're not super clean, they're still really greasy on the outside. Just the mating surfaces, just so that I can try to prevent them from leaking. But while I was looking at my intake manifold gaskets, they're just Felpro composite gaskets, I noticed this. I thought it was really weird. And I was also thinking, how am I going to get this to stay on the head without it sliding down? Well, as I was looking, there is, from the head gasket, little pieces sticking up, and they slide in right here, and it holds it where it's supposed to be. That is very cool. I don't know if most intake gaskets are like that and head gaskets are like that. If they are, that's awesome. I never knew that, but I don't know, caught me off guard. It's really helpful. I think I've seen some people use like a RTV, like a little dab of RTV to keep them from moving, but that just sits right there and it lines perfectly. Lines up perfectly. But in this kit, it also came with cork little valley gaskets here. I'm not going to be using those. I'm going to be using some RTV. I saw somebody who was doing this. They called it their little China wall. I think I'm going to call it my Trump wall. But I'm going to get some RTV and put a nice little bead there, and then I think we'll be ready to put the head or the intake on. It's very tempting to use these, but anytime I've ever used cork, they just disintegrate and get old, and I don't want to mess with that. So I got some of this Permatex Max Torque gasket maker. It even says it's good for intake manifolds. So I'm just going to run a bead on the front and back. I'd be lying if I said that was easy. That was very, very hard to do. So I'm gonna get the intake manifold and drop it right on and get all of the bolts started. Here's our new ARP intake manifold bolts. And here's the intake. Set this right here. Luckily, I think this is aluminum. It's too light to be steel. So see if we can get this lined up first try, not mess it up. Really don't mess this up. That's RTV. We're good. Got RTV on my finger. Let's get a couple of these put on.
Got one. You can get another one. The other side, if you can get this other one, that means we're lined up nice and good. Okay. Good. I hope I put enough RTD on the back, otherwise you're going to be pulling this whole thing apart. That will not be good. So, this was the one. I put the helicoil in and see if it goes in. Oh my goodness, it's going. That one probably been the easiest out of all these. Thank the Lord. Oh, it's perfect. Perfect. Alright.
So I'm going to get all these bolts threaded in. I'm going to look at the torque setting, and then we'll get these torqued down in an hour. And then I'm going to get my camera and we're going to look back there and make sure it's squished really well. Okay guys, it's been about an hour since we first placed the intake manifold on. That's what the RTV instructions said to do. The correct torque setting for the intake manifold on a 351 Windsor is 25 foot-pounds. So I have my 3/8 drive set to 25 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and torque it down. All right, everything is torqued down. Oh, except for this one. I cannot get this torque wrench in here to tighten that. So I'm just gonna have to get a good feel. That's about 25 foot-pounds, and then I'm gonna have to get a wrench and tighten that by hand. Go ahead and snug that down. See how this one feels.
Oh, there's James.
Okay.
Hello.
So you got your head on straight.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yep.